Mount Everest is a mountain located in the Himalayas, specifically in the Mahalangur Himal subrange, which lies on the border between Nepal and Tibet. As one of the natural wonders of the world, it's the highest point in the world above the global sea level, which, prior to 2020, measured at about 29,029 feet. If you've watched our video on the 10 dangerous places in the world to visit, then perhaps you'll recall that Mount Everest was one of our entries on that list, and for good reason. Although many climbers travel to the mountain hoping to make it all the way to the top, the extreme altitude and harshness of the overall environmental conditions makes it an extremely tough but satisfying achievement. Today, we will look at the history of Mount Everest, including when and how it was formed, how it got the name Mount Everest, and who were the first people to climb the mountain and reach the summit. Let's find out on Feed My Curiosity. Mount Everest was formed by the collision of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates. The upward force of the collision pushed the rocks upward, resulting in the formation of the mountain. This event took place roughly 50 to 60 million years ago, which is actually considered not very long ago. Thus, Mount Everest is considered a young mountain. In 1802, the East India Company instituted the trigonometrical survey in order to survey the Indian subcontinent. Initially under the leadership of William Lambton, it wasn't until 1823 in which his assistant, George Everest, became his successor and appointed Andrew Scott Woe as his assistant. George retired in 1843, and Andrew succeeded him as leader of the trigonometrical survey. The survey team reached the Himalayan region by the late 1830s, and in 1847, with observations taking place from Terai, a region between Nepal and India, the team discovered Peak B. The team observed the peak to be higher than Kanchenjunga, which was considered to be the highest peak in the world at the time. After the team's mathematician, Radhaneth Sikdar, carried out further observations and calculations, it was concluded beyond doubt that this peak was the highest mountain. Peak B was renamed Peak 15. Eventually, Andrew Woe suggested Peak 15 be named Mount Everest, which was later confirmed by the Royal Geographical Society in 1865. This wasn't its only name though. Homolagma is the peak's Tibetan name, and it means Goddess Mother of the World. In Nepali, the peak is named Sagarmatha, which means Goddess of the Sky. George Everest always preferred surveyed peaks to bear local names, and he also believed that locals would have trouble pronouncing Everest. Thus, he was against this being named the peak. But Mount Everest would be a name that would emerge as the most popular and well-known. So, who were the first people to try and climb the mountain? And were they able to make it all the way to the top? First, let's take a pop quiz. Who was the leader of the trigonometrical survey during the time they observed and measured Mount Everest in 1847? William Lambton, George Everest, Andrew Scott Woe, Radhaneth Sikdar. Do you think you know the answer? Post your answer below. It wasn't long after the survey of Mount Everest that people started to dream of climbing it. John Noel, who was a mountaineer, explored the well-known passes that led to Mount Everest. And in 1913, he came as close as 40 miles to it. When he wrote about his expedition in Tibet to the Royal Geographical Society, he publicly suggested that Mount Everest should be climbed. Inspired by John, the British expedition team became the first officially recognized group to attempt the climb. They made a total of 3 attempts in the years 1921, 22, and 24, all from the Tibetan side, which included George Mallory and Charles Howard Bury. Although John Noel was absent from the first climb, he was able to join for the second and third. In 1924, George Mallory and Andrew Irvine were seen 800 feet from the summit, but ultimately didn't survive. Since they never returned, it was never clear on whether they actually made it all the way to the top. The first pair of climbers to officially reach the summit were Edmund Hillary from New Zealand and Tenzing Norgay, a Sherpa from Nepal. The Sherpa are an ethnic group of people who live in the high-altitude regions of the Himalayas and are known to be skilled climbers. They provide assistance for anyone who wants to climb the various Himalayan peaks, including Everest. Edmund and Tenzing accomplished the climb from the Nepali side on May 29, 1953, and gained international recognition and fame, along with John Hunt, the leader of the expedition. Their success has inspired many climbers around the world to become the next successful ones to make it to the summit. By 1987, about 200 people had successfully reached the summit of Mount Everest. To date, over 4,000 people have successfully climbed the summit, with around 800 tourists attempting the climb each year. There are about 17 different routes to make it to the summit. The two most popular routes are the ones established by Tenzing and Edmund at the southeast ridge in Nepal and the north ridge in Tibet, where George Mallory disappeared in 1924. The North Ridge wasn't successfully taken until a Chinese team reached the top from there in 1960. Regardless of the route that is chosen, both are equally dangerous. The Southeast Ridge features the Khumbu Icefall that climbers must quickly traverse through, while the North Ridge has to travel a longer way along terrain above 27,000 feet to the top. The hazards that all routes share include frostbite, ice falls, hypothermia, snow blindness, and avalanches. Around 300 people have died while climbing Mount Everest. Perhaps the most amazing thing about Mount Everest is that it's actually still growing. The upward force from the collision between the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates, as we discussed earlier, is still active. A recent remeasurement of Mount Everest led to the realization that the peak had grown by 0.86 meters. That means that the official height of Mount Everest is now 29,032 feet. And it continues to grow, about half a meter every century. Although it takes roughly 40 days to complete the trip to the summit of Mount Everest, the years of preparation makes it all worth it. It's very common for tourists to just go near the peak. From the Nepali side, it takes about 12 days to hike to the Nepali base camp. From the Tibetan side, it takes less time, and tourists can drive to the Tibetan base camp. Although tourists can't stay at the camp itself, they can spend a night at the Rungbuk Monastery, which is known as the highest monastery in the world at 16,420 feet. From there, tourists can still get a great sight of Mount Everest. If you're ever planning to travel to Mount Everest one day, whether it's just to one of the base camps or whether you actually plan to reach the summit, we hope you are able to safely achieve your dreams. If you know of any other Mount Everest facts we should know about, or if you know anyone who actually reached the top, please let us know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and want to learn more things relating to science, technology, history, and tons of other fascinating subjects, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when we publish new videos. And now, on to the results of our pop quiz. Who was the leader of the trigonometrical survey during the time they observed and measured Mount Everest in 1847? William Lambton, George Everest, Andrew Scott Woe, Radhanath Sikdar. If you said C, Andrew Scott Woe, congratulations, you're correct. If you weren't, don't worry, you'll get a chance to answer correctly in our next video. That's it for today's video. Take care.